Hey everyone, I want to take you through a couple of things regarding quizzes, but in this video we're going to take a look at question bank management. In a Moodle course, and this one is a sports management course, once you go to the little cogwheel settings at the top, there actually is a more area at the bottom where you could find your question banks. And I'm going to jump right into the categories. Once you go in here, you can kind of switch back and forth between questions, categories, and then there's also places to import and export these things. The way I have this one set up is there is multiple question banks. If you take a look at something like test number 1. These from the publisher are all of the questions that were in a question bank called test number 1. And so I'm going to go over to questions and then select that test 1 category so that you can kind of see, like, here's the example. On the left hand side, you're going to notice that all of these questions are multiple choice, short answer, or true and false. Those are the ones that I left in Test Bank 1. If you go down one more level, a subcategory of that is Quiz 1. These were a separate question bank that were just multiple choice true-false questions for quizzes. And then I manually moved any question that was an essay question, because these ones require individual grading, and sometimes people want to have a completely automated quiz. They don't want to have any of these questions in here. So these are the essay questions. I labeled them for Chapter 1 Open. They came from the test bank, but they're labeled here. So you'll see that hierarchy throughout all of the chapters in here. Test 1, Quiz 1, Chapter 1 Open. Test 2, Quiz 2, Chapter 2 Open. Now, a lot of people will get a question bank from the publisher and they want to go through and remove questions that they are never going to ask. If it is, there's a couple ways to do it, but because this one is starting to get a lot of categories and subcategories, at this point I would just be removing questions. And the way to do that is, again, go to the questions, pick the category that you want to take, or not the category, excuse me. Go to questions, pick from the drop-down category which one you want to take a look at. So let's say I was going to take a look at the Chapter 4 questions. I could click on that and go through, reading through kind of what the questions are, select the ones that I don't want, and then at the bottom I can delete those questions once they're selected. Other options are to move these to a new category, maybe called junk questions, but if I were doing that, I'd still want them to be labeled as Chapter 4 or Chapter 5. So it requires creating an entire set of categories of junk questions for it. So I really recommend just deleting those questions. You can also preview the entire question by taking a look at it in the preview menu. You can also create new questions, and this is where a lot of people they just want to add 1 or 2 questions to their question bank. So go to the area you would want to create it. For example, let's say I want to create a test question for Chapter 8. And I'm going to create a new question, and you can pick from the many different types of questions. Now, typically, I only see people use multiple choice, true and false, possibly matching, short answer, and essay. Not many people use a lot of these other question types, so I don't have as much experience with them, but they kind of show you like what they are when you select them, so that you can kind of combine things, or if you have things that need to be calculated, etc., dragging and dropping. I usually keep it simple, simply because some of them may require students to have a browser, what do I want to say, like supported browsers, or be using it in the app. So for this example, I'm just going to add a multiple choice question. The first thing is give the question a name. That's what you see on the category. So a lot of times I actually say write the actual question here and then duplicate that. So for example, the question text is what they would actually see. So what is your favorite color? That is something that they're actually going to see. I actually recommend copying and pasting that as the question name, so it's easy for me to identify. Some people will even put things like Chapter 1 what is your favorite color so that they can find them later if they have them in a large group. But I have these in test 8, so they're grouped together. How many default points? I always leave that at 1. As far as general feedback, this is usually what would be displayed after they get or they answer the question. Most people do not use any of this. What they do use, however, is the answers, and they'll come down in here and say red for choice number 1, and let's say that red was not the right answer. I'm just going to leave that as none in there. Some people can even penalize, but you'll notice there's not a 0. None means there's no credit for that answer. Feedback is if you want to give them instructions after they've answered that. Again, most people do not use that as a choice. So you'll see choice number 2, green, choice number 3, blue, and choice number 4, let's go with black. One of those choices must be the right answer. So I'm going to say that blue is the right answer, and I'm going to give them 100% credit for that. You can add more choices as you're going through there. Define other things. Most of this stuff does not get saved, or does not get used. When you're finished creating that question, you can hit it save. And now in test 8, I have 21 questions, and the new one is what is your favorite color? You can see that right here, the question name as well as the question text. Now, a couple other things while you're looking at this. Because of the way I name the questions, I don't need to show the text in the question bank, so I can turn that off. I can still read what this says. If I turn it on, this is where I could have a different question name and text. That's really your choice. I tend to duplicate that just in case people have trouble finding those things. Again, I made a what is your favorite color. I don't want that to actually show up, so I am going to delete that question, selecting it, deleting it, and there we go. So that's really the idea in managing that question bank, adding a couple of questions, but more importantly, I would think if you're using questions from the publisher to go through and remove questions that you would just not ask. The ideal is to have this set up so that you can use it to create random quizzes and tests, which is what I'll show you in the next video.